on this episode of Edge of the Web.
The typical issue that I see many websites have, and when a website comes to me and say, oh, Aleyda, it's because I have all this CCTLDs, I have all this international domains, and when they tell me to optimize and localize the content in all of them, I don't have the resources. So for me, when they come with that issue, it's because they haven't done their prioritization and analysis and research.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Hear and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, alongside Tom Broadbeck, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
We're broadcasting from Edge Media Studios, located in downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. Every week, we bring you all the latest trends in digital marketing and marketing influencers. You can check out all of our recent shows at edgeofthewebradio.com. We're powered by Site Strategics, your digital marketing pioneers that are specializing in the agile digital marketing strategy and execution. If you want to know more about what that is, and quickly, it's results-based marketing. You think that would be for all marketing efforts, right? But it's agile, it's flexible, it's adjusting marketing techniques, always focused on results and improvement of your ROI. So go over and check out sitestrategics.com. That's SITE strategics.com, and let us know what we could possibly do for you. We always have a open conversation, a free hour of consultation to be able to get a snapshot of your performance and even see some key action items that you could take away. So, hey, my name is Aaron Sparks. I'm the host of the show, Edge of the Web Radio, as well as CEO of Site Strategics. The reason we do this show is multiple reasons. Primarily, it's for education of our audience. We've been a five and a half year show talking about digital marketing techniques that are sometimes very, very what do you want to say? Elusive. And what we're doing here is constantly demystifying, if it has to do with social media marketing or management, content marketing, conversion rate optimization, as well as search engine optimization, which is one of the key factors of what we do here at Site Strategics. We've been doing this show and focusing on just breaking apart those concepts and techniques to bring them to our audience. And by the way, it also keeps our powder dry and makes sure that we are paying attention what's trending on a regular basis. So I want to introduce to you some individuals in the studio, as well as our guests. We have the SEO geeks at Site Strategics, Nate Torvik, Caleb, Dan, and Jared Jewett. How are we doing here, guys?
Hi.
Very well.
Fantastic.
We are the SEO geek.
I am calling you that today because I'm so proud of how much SEO power that we have at Site Strategics.
Or is it possible that just the three of us make up one Tom?
It could very well be. We're absent Tom today, and he's on his way to Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken.
Vermont.
Okay.
Another V.
It's another V.
Close. Starts with a V. It's very north.
Of the two V's that are known.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, he's not here.
Venezuela.
So this is a somewhat suitable replacement. I don't know. I'm going to be able to see based on the show how everything goes. But this is the SEO team here at Site Strategics, and I'm very proud to be able to have all these individuals as part of the organization as well as part of the show. Let's introduce our guest. That's Aleyda Solis. She's the founder of Ahrefs. Hey, Aleyda, how are we doing today?
Very good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are more than welcome. And again, this is an international show. We have Aleyda, who's in Spain right now, correct?
Indeed.
Post siesta?
Post.
No siesta for me today, actually.
Bummer.
Sadly.
Well, how is Spain right now?
Well, actually, summer is already finishing a little bit. You know that in Spain, like, mostly everything stops during August, especially.
Yep.
So like this week has been already for most of the companies, like the first operative week after the big holidays in August. So it has been a little bit of pre-hectic, I will say.
or kind of a slow start, kind of reemerging, and let me ask you on in the order of work in Spain. Usually in the Midwest, work starts slowing down around November, December, just because budgets are changing, and on top of that, there's so many holidays that just going to eat up business's time. You have the same problem. Are there any other fluctuations seasonally that you see business-wise?
Well, definitely it is in summer. The one that I see with European clients. Actually, I have only one client here that is Spanish. The rest is European, but the same trend it followed in Europe. For example, one of my clients that is based in Paris. They were asking me since June or so. It's like, oh, do you really expect to go on holidays in August? When are you like scheduling your holidays in August? Because I'm going to be away like this 2 weeks, and so it used to coordinate well. So yeah, this whole mentality of going away during summer is like very well spread across Europe, I will say, and that's the biggest one. In December, it is too. I will say that it slows down definitely. And I can see that also from my American clients too, that is definitely the season where it really slows down for not only for Christmas, but also before for Thanksgiving, for example. That week is also very slow. It's funny because I also have a very good share of e-commerce driven clients, so it's also a good season for me to be monitoring and trying to identify patterns, but for which I have had to prepare very well before, I will say. So yes, I will say that these are the two big seasons, I will say. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. And so that kind of tees up our conversation about international SEO. But what I want to do real quick is entreat our audience to check us out on all the podcast listening platforms. Obviously, iTunes and Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Acast. Please check us out online. Always jump into the Facebook Live broadcast, because we are doing something that most podcasts don't do. We're live casting the entire show, as well as what we call edge casting. We're cutting edge on this and actually connecting with our Facebook Live audience, and we're interacting with them. So if you have any questions for our guest, throw them up into Facebook, and we are certainly going to be able to look at that and respond. And we also have a pretty cool prize here coming up, or I should say a giveaway here. In fact, let's give it to you right now. We have a brand new sponsor coming on board. It's Ahrefs. Ahrefs, the segment is actually brought to you by Ahrefs. If you want to get passive, consistent traffic from Google that converts into customers and sales, Ahrefs has all the tools and data to help you with that. Head on over to ahrefs.com and take their free 14-day trial. Make sure to check out their Academy section for some tutorials on how to make your website rank high in Google. But here's the giveaway. Check this out. Ahrefs is also giving away a free year membership to their tool. That's $179 a month, equaling over $2,000 a year, being a sponsor on the show. So how you win this is literally leaving your comment on the Facebook video stream. Concurrently, each and every show, we're giving away a free membership, and we'll announce the winner at the end of the show, or we're just doing it for this Facebook Live broadcast right now. So check it out, comment, and we're going to be giving away a free membership for an entire year. How about them apples?
Yeah, that's such a huge value. I mean, just the wealth of data you can get from that tool, and this is speaking from experience. Right off the bat, you set up even a month-long campaign.
Yep.
The amount of data that they're going to help you mine for your website, the opportunities they're going to help you find is worth the $2,000 value, even in the first month. I guarantee it.
All right, so let's take you through some of the latest digital marketing news.
I was very excited to start my reportings.
This week's trending topics.
All right, hey, we're jumping right into Search Engine Journal, an article from Matt Southern. Google is testing infinite scroll in mobile search, and the article itself, if we can bring that up here, is let's see here. We're talking about Google has actually been spotted testing infinite scroll search results pages in the mobile search. For some searches, rather than showing the usual next at the bottom of the search results, there is a see more results button. Clicking on the see more results tool will load more results right on the page the user is currently viewing instead of taking them to a new page. And they actually have an A/B comparison of testing there. Now, this is the Pinterest model. This is an ongoing flow of information based on your interest, right? So this is a big deal. This is a big user experience change when it comes down to the usability and the consumption of the search user. Aleyda, I would love to tee this up to you. What do you think about this change on the Google search side?
I think that Google is more and more, of course, focusing on mobile, especially with the mobile first index, right? Doing a little bit of testing also on UI and to see how we users interact with the SERPs. Just the fact that Google is testing infinite scroll and using it instead of typical paginations, right? It might indicate well that this type of pattern that is already been announced, that, for example, for mobile, it is going to be actually okay to use overlays, to not show the complete content or text content,
right.
And they won't demote that content that is hidden by default as they do on desktop. So for me, it's big because whether they choose or not to stick to this type of interface, it correctly shows the evolution of how it will be okay to use this type of features and JavaScript and Ajax type of interaction with users, indeed.
No, absolutely, and I think it also ties into an article here in a second regarding the AMP-based features snippets as well, because Google's diving into AMP. It's in mobile consumption. I mean, we absolutely understand that the apex has shifted where mobile consume. I mean, I think it was 3 years ago where in 2014 that mobile search eclipsed desktop search, right? So, I mean, we're at a place where now you have the mobile consumer, and Google's absolutely dialing in and providing that layer of presentation and the benefits for the mobile consumer. Oh, so for example, the next article here.
That's
Great
fine.
segue.
No worries.
I mean, realistically though, I mean, when you're thinking about infinite scroll sounds way cooler than it actually is.
Yeah, that's
for
absolutely
anybody
true.
that's paying attention.
Right.
Also, but what's going to happen to the actual organic ranking results? Right, they're going to be far less important to be on page one because there is no page two.
No.
Right. So especially from the mobile environment, everybody focuses on, especially finishing top two from the organic search results. But now that there is a literally an infinite number of results on page one, the emphasis on finishing in those top two spots will probably decrease at least a little bit. I mean, I'm sure the percentages of traffic that go and the click-through rates and all that other stuff are still going to stay pretty high for those top couple of spots. But that also goes to show that more people are probably scrolling or going to page 2, page 3, page 4 on mobile versus a desktop environment. So it's probably just going to be less important, including AMP.
I think people is more used already on mobile, especially because of the localizations of many results, right? The share of Google Maps type of integration, and the fact that every ad takes much more space and properties on mobile search to scroll down, definitely. And if you take a look at the click-through rate, that position 3rd, 4th, 5th have a mobile is definitely higher than a 5th results might have on desktop for sure. So yes, I really like. Hopefully, it is like this, and the outcome is like the one you mentioned before. People will be incentivized to scroll more and more. That will be nice, and will also take a lot of the weight that ads right now have, and the integration of features have sometimes, and the smaller visibility that organic has on mobile sometimes.
Well, I think I think maybe the additional factor here is that you're right. The ranking is not going to be nearly as important, but the attraction of the headline, attraction of the SERP itself, there's going to be a new real estate battle to not only from a positioning, but an entreatment and a benefit to the user of what you're going to get whenever you click on this particular link. So it's going to be taking on, the SEO performance is going to take on a lot of the methodology of AdWords to make sure that that consumer is empowered with understanding of what you're going to get when you click on that link. It's going to be a readjustment of not clickbait. That's the wrong term. It's going to be a much more persuasive in treatment, getting people to the
different
content.
way that the metadata is treated.
Absolutely,
right? Because there'll be a different cultural understanding, right, of what people are actually looking for.
Absolutely. So let's jump into another article from the Next Web. The Next Web shows YouTube live updates add faster chat and new mobile features. As we're talking mobile, YouTube is actually announcing this week new updates to the live streaming features that will make it easier to stream from mobile and interact with viewers. The new updates include low latency options, as well as new moderation ability. The low latency option, that's difficult to say, allows users to receive and respond to their chat messages within a second or two, as opposed to the several seconds it would ordinarily take. This will allow streamers to have more responsive community interactions, including Q&As and viewer input.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
AKA YouTube is trying to be better than Facebook.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Well, there's a gaming aspect to it too. I mean, I'm going to toot my own horn here. I do stream a little bit on Twitch, and it's a shot across.
Nerd.
It's a shot across the bow. It really is, because do you know who owns Twitch? Amazon.
Right.
Right. So Google has to play. Google has to be in this space, and YouTube is the most powerful play for them. So this is exactly what they're doing, and they're taking away a lot of that latency. Where Twitch, at best, for their partners that have millions of viewers and subscribers, have maybe a 10 to 15 second buffer and delay between what the users see and then how the streamer can actually interact. If we're talking about a 2 to 3 second change in interaction, that is gargantuan. I mean, that is really going to change the way that entire culture views that interaction.
No, I completely agree. What do you think about the live updates there regarding this type of challenge to the space of streaming interactivity?
Yeah, for me, it's fascinating how YouTube is launching all of this complementary type of features regarding video in general. Like, for example, the other day I was erasing how they were offering to watch movies and series already. So they for me, it's like they are trying to enter so many different spaces, and just because they have all this technology and platforms to become the competitors at a business-wise for all of these different players that already exist, right? So for me, it's like, okay, on one hand, we know they have the technology, for example, and on the community area, it's true, like YouTubers, for example, influencers are a huge community already, but they don't have this type of interactivity that these other, for example, gaming communities and platforms do already have, right? So for me, let's see if on one hand, if they are able to attract the people who have these communities, these huge followers, to start using them as a platform if they want to give it a go. And on the other hand, let's see what they are able to offer, because from my latest understanding, there was an update not so long ago that alienated a little bit many of the big influencers that they had, right? Yeah. Because they couldn't say whatever they wanted. They had some limitations, policies going on. So it's tricky, because this is not only about the technology, I would say, and the functionality that they are capable to give, but actually the people with the communities. Out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're absolutely correct. Hey, following up our last article here from Search Engine Land from our friend Barry Schwartz, Google officially adds AMP-based feature snippets to the mobile search results. So now AMP pages can rank in Google's position 0, but Google says AMP still is not a ranking factor. Really? Yeah, right. Google has actually confirmed with Search Engine Land last week that they had rolled out the ability for AMP links to show up in the featured snippets section at the top of the Google mobile search results. Google tells us that they launched this last week. As some started to notice, Google did confirm that AMP is still not a search ranking factor. What do you call that?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's not a search ranking factor, but the fact that it loads so fast.
Right.
And it can be
Yes.
included in the carousel. And
Absolutely,
it
yep.
has like a little icon out there. And now this ability to be out there, of course, it's incentivized users to use it. Actually, I was doing a few tests the other day of websites that had implemented that AMP. And the difference, and many of these websites had already a really good speed performance. So it was not clear for me what if the incentive was necessarily to improve the speed than to be actually ready to be, improved whenever the time comes when Google actually improved the rankings of the sites, or just to be able to include it in the carousel, which is a must for all media sites.
Right.
It was yesterday, I think, that also Google they publish like many success stories and case studies regarding e-commerce websites already using AMP. And here's the thing for me. I also remember that 3 days ago or so, it was one of the fathers of responsive web designs, the person who actually wrote the responsive web design book published by Aleyda Solis, etc. Right? He posted a very thoughtful blog post explaining why, although he thought that the intention of AMP was good as a framework in order to increase the speed of the web, the way that has been executed, it might be not necessarily the best one, because at the end of the day is risking the web openness and following real standards that have been really accomplished after many years of many different organizations of specifying it and not owned by a company, which is important. So yes, it's tricky. It's tricky indeed.
Well, I mean, there's huge consternation, at least on this side of the fence here. We've had debate after debate regarding AMP utilization and what Google's actually relegating us to do. I mean, let's be honest, is we're playing in their sandbox, right? And they're wanting content to be faster for their consumers. That's that's what they're in business to do. But at the same time, literally, they are removing our equation as marketers out of the opportunity to convert. All of the design elements, almost all of the design elements, are removed in order to have speed. So CRO is out the window. And now they're giving us a little tidbit of carousel imagery. Video is starting to surface as a additional tag that you can lift up inside of AMP, but it's still stripped down, bare bones content that's also owned by Google because it's on their CDN, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, they're insisting on it because they want everything fast, and we all have to play the game as SEOs, but there's so much left on the table to your open comment that we can no longer control because we are playing their game.
Yeah, indeed. Also, the fact from a user perspective, even it's not necessarily consistent because I have seen so many URLs in social networks. Not even like people is now sharing more and more the URLs generated in Google SERPs with the /AMP instead of the actual canonical URL of that mobile site, even the AMP of the site. So there are a lot of thoughts around like why it could have been implemented, but the way that has been implemented might not necessarily the most beneficial ones to give the best consistent user experience to the user, and also to refer as much as possible that traffic to the actual user property instead of they keeping them, right? So it was the other day that I think that they were showing an example, and actually I found one yesterday. It is Reddit. They are using AMP indeed, but if you want to scroll down to see more,
it kicks over too.
Click on a button and they refer you to their actual canonical original mobile URL. Right. So yes, it's a workaround, sadly.
That's splitting the fence right there,
isn't it? Yeah.
Well, and it's curious too, because I remember reading an article probably a month or two ago about some big brands. I think some media outlets too leaving AMP because they can't
control it.
Yeah.
No, it's yeah. So we're on the fence ourselves. I mean, we have our AMP content being delivered by Edge of the Web Radio, but it's still, man. There's so much. It was deployed I wouldn't say incorrectly, just haphazardly. Yeah. And there's a constant shift of what they want us to do. At the same time, we're losing the ownership, we're losing the control. So anyway, I don't think the debate's over at all.
It won't be for a long time. And that's the nature of SEO. It's so cyclical. I think SEOs, I think we're all really smart. We're going to toot our own horns here, right? And we're all geeks, and we all get actually so far ahead of the 8-ball that sometimes we even get ahead of Google and really what their best intentions were, because we're good. We're good at the game. And so it'll be a thing where once it all shakes out and they finally make those final decisions of how things are supposed to be, we're going to have to play that game. Yep. But everyone's so far ahead of it now, this is where we're at.
Yep. So if you want to be ahead of the game as well, you need to join our newsletter. How about that for a second?
Hey,
if you text to the number 22828, the word Edge Talk, you'll be able to start up the just from your smartphone. You'll be able to start up the membership joining of our free newsletter. That we're not doing anything else with your email except sending you some great content regarding show interviews, news stories such as this that we're packing up on a regular basis. Check out everything that we cover on our newsletter. So sign up, and in fact, we'll even give some incentivization of some of our sponsors inside that newsletter, so you can't miss that. So you can certainly sign up at edgeofthewebradio.com, as well as the number 22828, the word Edge Talk, and get signed up immediately. So with that, let's follow. You can follow all the following, all the trending topics over at edgeofthewebradio.com. But now let's deep dive with this week's featured guest.
Now it's time for the Edge of the Web featured interview with international SEO consultant Aleyda Solis.
Aleyda, we're so glad to have you on the show. It's been fantastic watching what you're doing on the international space. If I could introduce you to our audience, Aleyda Solis is a well-known and experienced international SEO consultant, author, and speaker with 10 years of experience in European, American, and Latin American companies. She's also been named a top digital marketing specialist by Forbes Entrepreneur, and recently featured in the Huffington Post. So, Aleyda, tell us your backstory.
Yeah, so I started doing SEO 10 years ago when I started working at an online marketing agency. And finally, I didn't actually start it as an SEO consultant, but I was in charge to increase the visibility, traffic, and ultimately the ROI and benefits of a network of sites. And I ended up doing what a lot of people do. SEO is much more cost effective if you don't have that much of a budget at the start, but you do have the flexibility and the resources to implement technical and content changes, right? So I started doing it and I loved it. And the really big opportunity for me is that the agency where I started doing it, they had a lot of international clients. It was an agency based here in Spain, in Salamanca, actually, like a smaller town. But a lot of the clients were from all over the world, tourism companies, a lot of international education companies. So that is how I started to focus not only into SEO, but much more and more into international type of settings and configuration. So for me, it's funny because I remember it was after Ahrefs was launched and become a thing that a lot of people started to talk about international far more, because now they had a pretty straightforward way or a mechanism to really control a little bit more the targeting or set the targeting, right? But in my case, oh my God, I had to work an alignment, international alignment far earlier from that. And it was really a pain before that, I have to say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I have a lot of experience on this, and it has been a quite enjoyable ride. I don't only focus on necessarily setting international type of SEO processes, but I am also very focused on technical, strategical SEO, mobile SEO, mostly in international environments too. So yes, but very focused on organic search indeed.
Very good, very good. It'd be safe to say that so many SEOs don't take into consideration the international factors on behalf of their clients. There are a lot of challenges in the space and a lack of awareness of how you can expand your reach just with a bit of code. I don't want to marginalize that at all, but just paying attention to what you need to do to your content and in your inbound factors to be able to be in so many new markets with a limited budget. You can expand much further than any traditional marketing, right?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people they only see the challenges, and of course there is a challenge and there is a cost attached to be able to give actual support. In a multilingual type of setting, you will likely need to hire people who are able to support you from that side. However, I have to say that I have seen so many businesses that had already reached a level where they couldn't grow that much because they had two huge competitors in a very competitive country and market. And then they decided to expand and by targeting other countries, and they were able to grow much more faster, right? The thing is to identify well the markets, identify how you want to target those markets, whether based on country, at a country level or language level, to really understand the behavior of that market and the opportunities behind, and prioritize accordingly. Because the typical issue that I see many websites have, and when a website comes to me and say, "Oh, Aleyda, it's because I have all this CCTLDs, I have all this international domains," and when they tell me to optimize and localize the content in all of them, I don't have the resources. So for me, when they come with that issue, it's because they haven't done their prioritization and analysis and research at the beginning right. Because if they would have done it right at the beginning, they wouldn't have ended up with 20 domains that they cannot support because they don't have the resources. They will have instead 4 domains instead that they will be able to support, and they will be able to really make the most out of them. So yes, it's a little bit like this.
So you're triaging a lot of international needs, and they've been scattergunned, and they come to you going, "Okay, help me clean up my mess," basically.
Yeah, sadly, I feel sometimes like if I am like a cleaner of their yes, let's organize, let's set the order in your house first. Indeed. Yeah, it's a little bit like this at the beginning, and to really identify if there's a point at all. Like, for example, I have had clients that they had like an English version in their Spanish CCTLDs, in their Spanish speaking to Spanish speakers in Spain, localized to Spain. So why do you have like an English version for Spain or for Italy or for France? Like, people in Italy, France, and Spain, they will search in Spanish, in Italian, and in France. So it's not to publish whatever in whatever property you have, just to index more, right? So there's this type of mentality that you need to really prioritize, focus, and understand and align everything to really connect with that specific audience.
I certainly want to open up questions from our panel here, but I did want to ask one quick question for our audience, and predominantly we do have a European audience, obviously an American audience, but 23% of our audience comes from Europe, and downloads and viewers. Can you give us a top list, maybe top 5 international SEO executions that the traditional, maybe national or regional oriented SEO would need to know about, the first steps to get into a series of tactics to explore the international execution?
Yeah, I will say that the first step is to really understand if you should target international markets based on language or country, targeting countries or languages, by really identifying the potential that there is out there for your business on one hand. For example, you may want to target all of Latin American countries at an individual level, but there is not enough search volume for your products or services at each individual country. So you may want to target first to all Spanish speakers, or you may want to prioritize just certain countries from Latin America, let's say, right? So what it is important, though, is like there's no rule of thumb. It's important that you validate and verify yourself if there's enough search volume to be ROI positive from the type of properties that you want to set. And on the other hand, if this really well aligns to your business models, like, for example, it makes sense that a blog, for a technology blog, they speak about technology, they speak about gadgets. So if they want to target the Spanish speakers, it is okay that they set a Spanish version for all Spanish speakers, because really the iPhone characteristics are not going to change in Spanish country by country, right? It's because of the business model, it's okay to target languages. However, there are other type of businesses, like, for example, if you are an e-commerce and you need to specify currency, delivery options, and local support for each country, that will be different. And so where it really makes sense that you target the specific countries in each case. So it's very important that you validate this at the beginning, because everything else will be aligned. Your properties, whether using CCTLDs or subdirectories or the different options that you will have for configurations will be aligned on this. And sometimes what I find is that the configuration that exists with hreflang, with CCTLDs overlaying each other with subdirectories, etc., is just because they haven't set this initial alignment and setting and targeting well at the beginning, right? Yep. I will say the second advice, straightforward, is Google doesn't support regions. They support whether languages, and you can set language in hreflang, for example, or countries attached with a language, or a country attached with many languages. But it's whether language or country. You cannot target all Europe, for example, or Asia, or all Latin America. There's no way to do that right now, or to specifically specify that to Google. So many of the overlays of misconfigurations or cannibalization type of scenarios that I have found is because, they are overlaying each other with a Latin American version, a Spanish version that is not correctly set to Spain, and then another version to any other Spanish speaker worldwide or something like that. So it's very important to correctly make sure that their targeting really aligns to what Google is going to be able to support, and to give you the tools to specify. Otherwise, you will end up cannibalizing yourself, quite probably, if not. And then the other typical question that I am asked all the time is to use whether CCTLDs or subdirectories or subdomains, right? And then again, it's about validating what it is the best in your case. If you identify that Google is really prioritizing local CCTLDs for the target country, for all your top queries, when you do a keyword research, you identify for all of your top queries for that country is only CCTLDs are ranking, not .com with a subdirectory, then you may want to select the CCTLD. In the case that you are able to start with a little bit of authority, with a little bit of link popularity that you can compete with, because there's this other thing. A lot of people say, CCTLDs are the ideal option, and they are to geolocate if you are targeting a country. However, if all of your competitors in that country have millions of links already, and you start with a CCTLDs with 0 links, unfortunately, it's not going to serve that much that you start with it. And you may want to then, in that case, to start with a generic domain with a subdirectory that is geolocated through the Google Search Console to that specific country. So you see, it's again validating well and aligning your property to what makes sense in order to compete in each specific market.
That was great.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that was only 3 though. He asked for 5.
I don't
so
want
we need
5.
2 more. I'm just saying.
I want to leave you speak. Sorry.
No, you're totally fine.
Wonderful.
You're totally fine.
That was pure international SEO. That was
great.
like a fount. That was fantastic. Gentlemen, any international SEO questions that you want to tee up?
You really answered the major kind of techie, geeky question that I was going to ask. That was fantastic. Do you find, though, your advice was to kind of start in each, let me make sure I understood kind of your answer, is to start in each sort of those language-based indexes and seeing which of those tactics is kind of playing the best for the large players in those spaces? Do you find that it is different very often when you're doing that kind of research? I mean, is that such a rock that you kind of have to push down the hill to be able to get things going? Or let's say someone didn't have the time to do that research. Of course, we as consultants would say you need to have the time to do that research. But let's say that they didn't. What would your suggestion be to just start trying to like you said, geolocate and start ranking in a place where maybe logistically in your business model, you want to start growing into, and you have some business opportunities there, and you got to get going tomorrow, right? What would your suggestion be?
I will say that if you want really a cost-effective balance to start right away without so many operational type of cost, I will go with a subdirectory. With a subdirectory, you can geolocate it to a specific country. You can also leave it as a language version if you want. So if you don't geolocate, and you can specify also the href line annotations for it very well, whether targeting to the language or to the country too. Alternatively, and I will say that you don't need to maintain an independent domain, and it will really simplify everything while also profiting from the authority that the main domain already has. So it will be a much more straightforward way to grow. For many clients, I have to say that when they are not necessarily that sure that they really want to pursue like a further activity in a specific market, I will say okay, let's do a pilot project, right? Let's identify which are the top products or top services that are really searched in that specific market, which are not necessarily the same as the one that you have right now in your current market. And let's create like a very minimal type of web structure around them, like landing pages for them, geolocating them with a subdirectory, very straightforward, and let's see what we can achieve with them. I have to say something, because you mentioned regarding the ideal scenario of doing a proper research around each market, because it can behave really different. And it is like this, especially like if you go to any Latin American version of Google, any flavor of Google for even big countries, Colombia, Mexico, or Argentina, you will see that there are pages that are being ranked there for very competitive terms, or for which should be very competitive terms for very profiting industry that wouldn't be ranking at all if they were targeting the US or the UK or Germany or even Spain, right, in Spanish, because the web ecosystems in this country is not that rich, sadly, still. So Google, they cannot apply the same filters that they apply in the US or in the UK, right? So definitely they can get away with much more, I would say. So you need to take that into consideration too.
Sure. But we highly recommend never doing anything that triggered the filters to begin with.
Of course.
In the U.S. But you're absolutely right. There's some exploit there, and in these different spaces, they're not nearly as strong competitively. But Google wants to provide its audience in those countries relevant content, but they got to open up that filter a little bit wider to allow relevant content coming in, right?
I got another couple of things. First, I would like you to answer one question that we ask totally in Spanish, because I love your accent. I just want it to happen. It could be a fun question later. And secondly, so from a CDN standpoint, there is no emphasis from Google on having a server in that country. Right? So what, have you had any experience from a CDN or from a server perspective in that particular country that would say, yes, you should probably have some sort of server presence in that country when you're serving up that content or anything like that? Just because if you have a server here and you're putting Spanish content out there, is it important, or have you had any experience or seen any results from that perspective?
it's about to be able to give as many signals that you can, right? From a geolocation perspective. So I remember that back in the day, like, I don't know, when I started doing international SEO, like let's say 2007, 2008, 2009, it was critical to have the site hosted in the country to be targeted, to have a local IP. Because yes, Google really relied on that, to serve the resource of that property, the pages, the resources of that property to that target market. Indeed, however, with hreflang, with the Google Search Console geolocation feature, and then on the other hand, the existing functionalities that CDNs provide, Google has definitely switched the reliance on a local IP to really take into consideration a much wider set of signals. So what I will say is that for me, it is more important that my client sites are fast and then they have a local IP, but they are horribly slow, for example. Or if they need to spend so much switching or migrating to a local IP that they will harm their availability, or they will harm the reliance on other factors that are much more important and critical, right? So for me, it's a balance, and right now I'll say the IP is not as critical as it was many years ago, and for sure, if a website, if a client of mine is suffering from speed issues, a CDN will be the way to go. Especially if they have a global audience, right? So yes, did.
Fantastic. Hey, I do want to give a shout out to another new sponsor that we have on the show. That's Page One Power, your solution for custom link building campaigns. In addition to their manual link building campaigns, they also offer technical SEO audits, link building, training courses, and enterprise solutions. They work hard to make sure that your business has the best online visibility on Google and beyond, and they're driven by their industry-leading innovation, which leaves them a tailor fit to campaigns, even such as this that we're talking about. So for the Edge of the Web listeners, they can save 10% on their first campaign by going to pageonepower.com/EOTW. And if we can throw that on the screen real quick, that's pageonepower.com. There it is, up in the upper /EOTW, and tell them a little bit about your link building needs. Page One Power, real people, real links, and real results. Thanks for the patience there. We certainly do want to get that question answered in Spanish.
Yep, that's it. Yeah. So everything that you just said in Spanish.
No.
Oh my God.
So we do have another question here, and
this is really good.
We have a number of geek questions. I'm going to tee that up to either Caleb or Jared here to fire away.
Yeah. So from a user standpoint, user behavior standpoint, are you finding that you have to do a lot of research there? And even I feel like, in some of my experience before, I've had to look into what do users prefer, even from a TLD standpoint. Because I feel like historically I saw users in Brazil preferred the .com.br extension. And even, in addition to that, have you seen your experience lead you to having any extra knowledge on some other engines based on, user preferences for that geographic area?
Yeah, I think that is a great question too, because it's not necessarily only if Google will show you at the top positions, but if actual users will click on your results. And I host along Gianluca Fiorelli and Anton a Q&A in Spanish with a Googler a couple of months. So it's called Google PNR, Google Preguntas y Respuestas. There you have
Perfect.
That works.
Yeah.
All right. That was
answers.
sufficient. Yep.
And we had one, I don't think it was the last one, but the one before. In any case, there was one about international SEO, right? And they were saying that officially, since it is a group of signals that they take into consideration, right? The fact that you even, if let's say, if you're like a little hotel in Italy, and you have a domain that with whom that you have been using for 15 years or something like that, that has a IT CCTLD, so really targeted to Italy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to enable an English version, but of course, the English speakers that you want to reach are the tourists that are coming from the US, the UK, international markets. So having .it/en doesn't make any sense because it's going to be geolocated by default to Italy, right? So when we ask them, okay, so what would you recommend that this business do? Because they whether will need to start with a generic TLD at .com, .net to start targeting all these international markets in English. So they will need to start from scratch, which is a pity. And then on the other hand, with a new domain, right? And then on the other hand, to also start from scratch, targeting each individual country with their hotel name, .com, .co.uk, whatever, right? And they were saying, oh, but remember, is a group of signals. You can very well still targeting English speakers with your IT CCTLD because they do take CCTLD into consideration, but it's not the only one thing. So if they see that there are tons of links coming from the UK or the US going to that English version, they can very well rank those specific English pages to these countries, right? But again, my position is, will an American click on an English page if they see that there is an IT TLD over there? Or even, I think that maybe even Americans are not that aware because they are used to SIA.com and that's it. But for example, in Europe, you are like much more aware, I think, to look also to the extensions because you end up interacting much more with other countries like this. And will a British be open to click to an Italian CCTLD, right? And I since I have access to data of many internationally targeted websites using subdomains, subdirectories, and also CCTLDs, I have many sets of data showing that even if .co.uk or a .com/UK ranks well in the US, the click-through rate will be much lower than the actual American version of that page. So even if the position is the same, like people will end up finding out. It can switch. The changes can be much more stronger in certain countries than others. But I will say that let's try to be as consistent as possible, and let's try to connect with the user in the most personalized way in for every market, right? And the most personalized and granular way that you can connect with an international audience right now is by using a CCTLD indeed. So if it is viable for you, if you can start with a CCTLD with enough link authority and or popularity, I will say that definitely that gives you that's the ideal scenario for sure. Or otherwise, the subdirectory, geolocated, etc. What I would avoid really at all is to try to, indeed, targeting someone that is in another country with the non-relevant CCTLD, because that CCTLD is already geolocated by default to another country first, and then second, users might not necessarily be incentivized to click on that results necessarily. Yeah.
There's your answer, Caleb.
Moral of the story is Americans don't want to look at anything that's not American.
That's not American.
Weird.
Yeah, I know. So, because we're selfish and self-centered. But
well, Aleyda, we certainly appreciate your time today, and it's a fantastic wealth of knowledge that you have inside of international SEO. Could I ask you, if we could wrap up, what bugs you about your industry right now?
You know what? The one thing that bugs me in general about the industry is that we have come so much further and we have evolved so much in the last years, especially and focusing towards growth or on capitalizing on sites' characteristics instead of trying to find exploits or easy ways or workarounds, right? for easy outcomes. It has become also a little bit more challenging with Panda, Penguin, and now Phantom, right? Google is getting better at catching spam. However, I have to say that because I am much more aware of other not so advanced and mature markets as in the US, right? So for example, here in Spain or even Latin America, you still see the type of advice or easy tricks type of advice that sadly they still work in many of these markets because again the filters are not the same, etc. But yes, it's a little bit painful to see still that it still works. So hopefully the web ecosystem is going to be able to advance more in these other markets to be able to catch up at some point, and we will see that there are less and less people living out of not necessarily the best possible advice given to a community sometimes of new people trying to learn and it's okay if you want to test things out with your own websites, of course, but not necessarily if a real business depends on it, and sometimes they are not necessarily aware of the risk. Right?
Absolutely. Well said. And I can only imagine that the adoption of best practices are going to be exponentially embraced by all the different nationalities, all the different countries, and the filters. I mean, people are going to jettison bad practices in a much quicker pace, just because of the environment we're in now. So I think they're going to be seeing the removal of those tactics, like I said, exponentially. I do want to reference one of the questions that was asked to you, and I think we have the winner of the Ahrefs giveaway. It's Eric Daffron. He actually asks, does Aleyda stress over Ahrefs language validation, or is her alignment more focused on content? So as opposed to just the Ahrefs lang tag, as I hear it, you're really focused on content as being the preeminent factor for engagement when it comes down to international SEO. Am I correct there?
Yeah, well, on one hand is to be able to connect with the audience with the right content, with the relevant terms, with the relevant queries. There are exactly the same services that are called different in the US than in the UK. Like, for example, if you go and check the Airbnb homepages, you will see that the American one is targeting vacation rentals, right? And then the UK one, they are more into holiday rentals. So you can see there are different terms. The same with apartments versus flats. Right. In UK, exactly the same. So yeah, you need to localize on one hand the content, but also it's about also popularity, of course, as anything with SEO. So especially on certain very competitive markets, you do definitely need a good share of links in order to rank well from local sites, from sites with the target country CCTLDs, with the target country IP, etc. So that is ideal. That what you cannot, like, for example, it's about being consistent. Like, if you really want to become an authority and rank well in the UK, then you will need to spend a little bit on increasing your popularity factors there, and doing a little bit of outreach, incentivizing your community to endorse you, to link to you, to refer you from local websites that can be identified as referring you indeed.
So there's your answer, Eric, and we'll certainly reach out to you and let you know about signing up for and getting the package from Ahrefs. Fantastic contribution and well said, Aleyda. Hey, something to ask you. What excites you about your industry right now?
Right now, the one thing that really excites me is mobile. All this mobile first index migration switch that is about to happen on one hand, and that excites me a lot. And then another thing that really excites me is about the progressive web apps. How for me, it's like there are like two parallel industries already, like the SEO one and the App Store optimization one, that really is just, for me, when I have read and gotten and had the opportunity to optimize this, it's like what SEO was like 15 years ago. So it's still very basic, and there's a lot of business around it. There's a lot of effort around it, and I have help my clients where they mostly always have an app version of their website. And sometimes they really want to incentivize the user to go to their app. So I end up doing also App Store optimization for them in those circumstances. So for me, it's fascinating to see how both of them will merge with progressive web app at some point. How indeed you will need to have much more technical knowledge, awareness in order to be able to validate the accessibility of the content in those scenarios on one hand. And then on the other hand, how we will be able to have a much more, from a user perspective, a much more seamless experience with websites that are able to work offline and have all these cool functionalities that apps have. Because it's really heartbreaking to see, like, on one hand, the amount of usage that you have on and visibility that you can achieve with websites, but then the engagement, how it switched so much with apps where on the web it decreases, on the app it really goes up, and the conversions really goes up, and the type of engagement, etc. So really, for me, it's going to be game changing indeed.
Oh, that's fantastic. We can certainly tell that you're passionate about this particular space in digital marketing, and you're a huge evangelist, and we certainly recommend all of our listeners be able to pay attention to Aleyda Solis when she's talking about international SEO. She absolutely knows what she's talking about. Hey, we want to end up with a fun fact, and you shared it with us. What's this, being a digital nomad? What's going on here?
Yes. Well, I travel a little bit. On one hand, since I became independent, right? Most of my clients, they are all over. I've had very few clients from Spain, so they don't need to see me physically necessarily. So when I have grown, the people that I collaborate with, they are not here. They are all over. So I also travel a lot because I speak a lot at conferences. But what people don't realize is that when I travel, I am still working. I am still having calls, and I think that in our sector is very feasible, as I am showing, right? So that gives me, on one hand, well, it makes me to work much more, I will say, and to be much more creative around work. That can be will require a lot of discipline, I will say. But then on the other hand, I have this huge opportunity to be able to travel all over and then take a little bit of vacations every time when I go to a exciting new destination, right? So at the beginning of this year, I went to Australia. This was my second time, and I went to the Great Barrier Reef and to New Zealand. That was amazing for sure. And then I went also to the US earlier this year to SMX West and Napa Summit. So I took a few days off to go to Yosemite. So yes, I try to make the most out of it, and I think that we all should. I think that I am a real believer of remote work, and I actually have my own project around that. I have my own website that is called remoters.net with another colleague of mine who's also an SEO, and also she's independently located too. So yes, if you have any remote-based company out there and you have job offers, whatever, we always publish stories, interviews of companies sharing their journey, and for free. We also promote remote-based jobs too. So yeah.
Well, that's a nice plug. So it's remoters.net that we want to make sure our listeners also pay attention to. And we all know that, Forbes has said by 2020, 40% of the workforce here nationally is going to be the gig freelance economy. They're going to be remoters. And so remoters.net would be a fantastic place to go to check out what your next gig could be. Is there anything else that we could promote for you, Aleyda?
Well, I have this book, SEO book, that is in Spanish, though. So if any of you are Spanish speakers and want to learn more about SEO, I will invite you to read my book. You can, if you look for, SEO, las claves esenciales, there you go, another phrase in Spanish.
Nice.
You will find it indeed.
Excellent. So we have the URL on the video, but we'll also put this in the show notes as we broadcast and publish the podcast here on Tuesday. So check out our show and be able to follow everything that Aleyda's doing. On top of that, we want to make sure we give the social outs. Twitter, it's Aleyda, Aleyda. Facebook is Aleyda SEO Tips. LinkedIn, you can find her Aleyda. Instagram Aleyda. So great branding in that space.
Absolutely.
And
I have to say something. If you search for Aleyda on Google.com, right, and I'll actually name every fable of Google, I will be ranking number 1 because also my name is not so common even for Spanish.
Sure.
However, there's a thing there. There's a little bit of a backlash. If you scroll a little bit, you will see, and I actually have like a knowledge graph also. I am shown there, so it's a really good result. But if you scroll a little bit, you will see that the pictures there are not from me because there is this beauty queen, Miss Latin, whatever that
right
is called Aleyda Ortiz, who won like a few years ago. So you will see a lot of bikini photos there that sadly are not mine because I wouldn't care to have that body. To be honest. But sadly they are not mine. So it's funny because all of the photos are from her. All of the actual organic results are from me. You can see which are popular in their own sector there. But yes, it's funny because I actually realized about this when she started to compete because I have Aleyda as a handle in Twitter, in Instagram, whatever. And I started to get a lot of requests from Instagram to change my password. So someone was trying to take my profile there. I was like, two-factor authentication right now. Super long password, whatever. And then I realized, there's this other Aleyda who's like starting to compete or whatever. I can see where that could be.
Well, we're certainly talking to the real Aleyda, and if we can do anything to help in the optimization imagery, we'll absolutely do it. Well, thanks for listening to edgeofthewebradio.com. A special thank you to all the colleagues at Site Strategics, the SEO Geek panel here, as especially our guest, Aleyda Solis. Be sure to check out all the must-see videos on edgeofthewebradio.com, all the insider information. That's it for Edge of the Web this week. Thank you so much for all your participation, and thank you to the new sponsors, Ahrefs as well as Page One Power, and we're certainly going to be able to support them into the future here. Some great participation from our audience as well. So thanks again for watching and listening to edgeofthewebradio.com, and we will be talking to you next week. Do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. Bye-bye.